Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is an award-winning productivity coach, Tina Collura. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I'm so happy to be here.
All right. So you do a lot of the same types of things that I do with my clients, but you also do some very unique things. And I want to get into that. So before we even get started, can you tell our listeners about yourself? Tell us about your business.
Absolutely. So as you said, I'm an award-winning productivity coach, and I help people get out of their own way and into results in less than 60 days. So many times we are our worst enemies, but we could be our best assets as well, right? And in business, we could be that bottleneck that is stopping us from, blowing up and letting all this business in. So people who come to me are basically fed up with their current situation, whether it be personal or professional, and they are struggling with just getting the results they know that they deserve, right? So my zone of genius is sales coaching. I used to be a project manager, a change manager, and leadership. So that coupled with all my coaching skills, I help people take their big ideas, break them down into smaller, more attainable tasks so that they can see the results they know they deserve.
We all could benefit from doing a little bit more to get out of our own way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you see with your clients some reoccurring themes.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So we're talking to a group of entrepreneurs here, business owners. We all are growing. We're all doing our own inner and outer work to be a better version of ourselves, to be a more successful business person. And a lot of times people think that there's something wrong with them because of some issue that they have been struggling with for a long time. I can't even count, I don't think, the number of times a client has said to me over the years, is there something wrong with me? Or is this normal? Or, something along those lines. And I have to reassure them, no, this is really, really, really common.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you seeing?
So a lot, based on my experience with the people that I've worked with, a lot of it comes down to self-doubt, right? Fear, like the top 5 fears of any entrepreneur, right? The fear of success, the fear of the unknown, right? The fear, the perfectionism, right? Everything has to be perfect before I launch this, or everything has to be perfect before I have my first client. Like I always tell my clients, what I've discovered is imperfect action is better than no action at all, right? So I try to break down those barriers. I try to help them understand that fears are meant to protect us. They're not meant to cripple us, right? And a lot of the problem is they get overwhelmed. The clients that I'm working with, they're overwhelmed with all that they have to do or think that they have to do. And then it cripples them to the point of inaction. Like, oh no, you know what? I can't do this or I can't do that. And, I tell them, I'm like, if we could just get you organized, let's identify the areas where you're struggling the most, right? Let's pick the top 3 and then start putting some action items together. Then start putting down some, small tasks that you could do each day that's going to get you closer and closer. It helps when you break things down, Alicia. I feel like it just helps to feel like, okay, not so bad. I can do this, right? And slowly but surely, it helps break down those barriers.
Yeah, well, that's how the mind works. Mm-hmm. So we have to break things down because, like you said, when you're in that state of overwhelm, your mind just shuts down.
Yeah.
But when we are able to, take a few steps back and be more objective about things, and we're able to see things in more of a logical sequence, it makes what previously seemed impossible now incredibly possible. And now people can start to see themselves as capable of accomplishing that particular goal.
Yeah. And Alicia, the thing is, and I think you know this as well, when we're in a state of overwhelm or we are like stressed to the point that our brains are foggy and we can't focus and we're not hearing the conversations that are going on around us, that Charlie Brown, wah, 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 right? How can anyone think straight in that state, right? So they come to the point where they admit that they have a problem or they admit that they need help, and they're open, right, to working with people like you and I. And we help clear the fog. We're taking them from feeling overwhelmed to confident and to certain, right, with the clarity that they need to take the next steps,
I
right?
love this topic of overwhelm. It's not actually one that I've had on the show yet.
Okay. Yeah.
But
It's a big one.
it's a big one. In fact, it has been a theme within my own clients just over the past week or so.
Okay.
In fact, I had scheduled a 1 hour lunch break for myself today with a full schedule. And I didn't even get the whole thing because I had a client say, I'm overwhelmed. Can you fit me in for a session? So that's how timely this topic is.
Wow.
And as business people, especially when we start to really get some momentum going, we have so many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different things that we can do to grow and to expand our business, not to mention if you're into any type of personal development or business development, there's all of that stuff. And then you add to that, if you have a family, if you have children, pets, right? Holidays, whatever it is. And now this stuff starts to compound. And it doesn't take long before you are in that state of like, oh my God, what do I even do now?
Right.
So when that happens, it's like putting the emergency brake on,
Yeah.
and you become incredibly unproductive. And so if you're even trying to push through that internal resistance, it does adversely affect your productivity. It does adversely affect your clarity, and it definitely adversely affects your performance. So then the things that you are getting done, you're not doing at that high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I'm just going to share a personal story with you, Alicia, to outline, how severe it can be. Okay. So, and rewarding at the same time. So when COVID happened, I jumped into a business development program and I grew my business quite quickly. So after, my first 30 days after joining this program, I got 3 paying clients. By day 90, I had 13 paying clients. And my husband was like, whoa, he's like, slow down, because I was still working a 9 to 5. So I'm working a 9 to 5, building my coaching business. I have 2 small children. I have 3 dogs. And he's like, and what about me? And I was like, wow. I'm like, okay. And, have you ever been at that point where you can't breathe and it's like you can't catch your breath? That's the anxiety and the stress, like showing the signs, right? That, ooh, like something's happening. Um, so I used to declare Sundays, see yourself grow on Sunday, because I would take Sunday afternoon and I would reassess myself. I would do all my self reflecting on Sunday. And I would also do my planning for the week. So I started questioning myself. I would list out all the areas of my life that needed my attention, right? Family, friends, business, husband, career, and I started writing out what is working, what is not working, what can I do better? And every Sunday I would share that with my husband, and I would share the schedule with my husband, and I would ask him, should I be moving some stuff around? Can you help me? Is this enough time for family? Is this enough? So it really made me self-reflect and become more aware of, how much I was taking on, what was being neglected, and what needed my attention. Does that make sense?
I love that you shared that. A lot of business people, and I'm speaking from personal experience and working with a lot of clients over the years, do not take time to assess what they're doing, not only in their business, but in their personal lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't take time to really look objectively at all of these balls that you're juggling,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you're accumulating things that really are unproductive. And sometimes you're feeling misalignment with certain things, but you're not slowing down enough to say, wait a second, something's off here. I need to change this area of my life or my business.
That's
And
right.
that can really contribute to that feeling of I'm overwhelmed, I'm overbooked, I'm stressed out, I'm not taking care of myself. The business is suffering because I've got issues and I'm just going so fast that I'm not properly addressing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, it made me reassess how I was doing business, right? So I had all these one-on-one clients. I'm like, okay, you know what? It's time for group coaching, right? So I developed like a group coaching program. And it also forced me to increase my prices, right? So I could do more with less, and have more time to spend with family and or my personal life, right? I was always a firm believer in balance, like achieving balance in your life. And I always say, like, the four key areas of our life, the physical state, mental, emotional, and spiritual state, need to be taken care of, right? I look at them as like four tires on a car. If one of them's deflated, something's going to go wrong. So that's why I'm a self-reflector, right? And I think that's our superpower as coaches, because if we're not willing to look internally, at what works and doesn't work for us, how can we help others do the same, right?
I've said it so many times. I've even said it on this podcast. So some of the listeners have said, oh, she said that before.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot give what we do not have.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes energy, that includes attention, that includes skill set, so it's really so multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whether you are in a service-based industry or you have a company and you have products, right? Regardless of what type of business you're in, you always need to be reassessing. And the taking care of your inner world is so important, regardless of what industry you're in, not just for service providers, coaches, therapists, those types of individuals who are working one-on-one with clients. But I mean, honestly, a lot of my clients over the years, they're CEOs of big companies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an awareness factor in all of that. You always need to be reevaluating, how am I spending my time? Am I burning myself out? Do I need to delegate? Do I need to let people go? Do I need to work on how I'm communicating with people? What are my limiting beliefs around how people see me, how people perceive me, what are my limiting beliefs around money and around success. You've got to do all of that self-assessing on a regular basis to really create the type of positive momentum you want in your life and business.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I do that on a monthly basis. I used to do it on a quarterly basis pre-COVID. Once the pandemic hit, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this on a monthly basis, because personally, I felt like I needed it. And I wanted to make sure that I was taken care of so that I could take care of my family. Maslow's hierarchy. Well, I have Tina's hierarchy, and I'm number one on the list. It's usually in the order that everyone's waking up, Alicia, I'm not going to lie. So I'm usually up first, and I do my meditating, my journaling, my exercise, my yoga, my stretching. And then the kids will wake up, and then the dogs will wake up, then my husband, but me first. Because if I'm not well, how can I take care of everyone else?
Yeah, you cannot give what you do not have.
That's right. Yeah, you got it. You got it. You got it for sure.
So you've talked a little bit about your own personal journey. I have to inquire just a little bit here about your own mindset journey and maybe something that you had to overcome in order to get to where you are today. So can you share a little bit of something with us?
Absolutely. So I remember the day actually to a T. It was January 31st of 2020, and I had a breakdown. I had a breakdown at the office with my leader, and all he asked me was, "How are you doing?" And I just broke down crying. I had reached that moment where I just couldn't handle it anymore. I had experienced some tragedies in the months prior, and I didn't realize, Alicia, how it had affected me internally, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And the loss of someone dear to you really does put things into perspective. So I lost a 12-year-old relative to a tragic car accident 1 month. And then the next month, I lost a friend to suicide. And so again, really put things into perspective. And that breakdown was more or less me just saying enough. This is not the life I am meant to live. This is not how I want to be spending my days anymore. I was commuting 4 hours a day, to a job I did not love, dropping my kids off at 6:30 in the morning. And after that, went home, took a mental health day, started journaling to myself. What's wrong? Why are you feeling this way? What's going to make you feel better? So I did this exercise called the perfect day. I just closed my eyes and I started visualizing, what do I want my perfect day to look like? And a lot of it had to do with me being at home, spending more time with my kids, having meals with my husband, not commuting 4 hours a day. And that was February. Then March, COVID hit. And my husband looked at me, he's like, did you bring this on? He's like, because this sounds like your perfect day. I'm like, minus the pandemic. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm gonna accept it. And again, it took for me to have that mental breakdown, Alicia, for me to open my eyes and my soul to really look internally to say, you are not in alignment with where you're supposed to be, right? And I always say to people, how many more breakdowns are you going to have before you have that big breakthrough, right? How many more times is that going to take? So
there are so many people who hit that deep rock bottom place within themselves, and that is the catalyst for them to change their life. I know that that's what happened for me. But there are a lot of people who are really suffering and they haven't hit their rock bottom yet.
That
it's
just, yeah,
it's sad. It
it
is
is.
sad. It is sad. And what I've noticed is it doesn't have to be a huge thing to really kick somebody's ass and say, wait a second, what am I doing to myself? It doesn't. Everybody's rock bottom moment is different. So there are some people who wake up one morning and look in the mirror and they're just like, what am I doing to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the moment.
Yeah.
But it always involves that decision, right? Because you could have chose to go back to work and to keep doing the same thing that you had been doing and just suffer through it. You could have. That was a choice.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't. Something inside of you, something more spiritual, maybe, but whatever it is, something inside of you was like, okay, enough's enough. When I'm doing hypnotherapy with somebody, one of the the sayings that comes up is enough is enough, because we can all relate to what that means for us. It's like when you've endured something for probably longer than you should have, right? You were miserable that whole time, but nothing changed, right? But at some point, there's like a tipping point, and you're like, enough is enough. And that's when you're willing to do the thing that you were resisting and avoiding before. That's the very thing you need to do to completely change your circumstances.
Yeah. And there's so many people that just feel trapped, or they feel like they can't make a change because fear of the unknown, right? Or lack of confidence or lack of certainty, right? It scares the people around me how quickly I make decisions and how quickly I jump into, a decision that I've made. And I always know that, you know what, I'm going to land on my feet and I don't want to live with regret, right? So I've always been very in tune with, I don't like this. I don't like this situation. I'm not very comfortable with this person. You know what? I'm just going to make a change. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to, associate myself with this person. You know, again, it's all about self-awareness and confidence. I recently made another career move, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know what, I am open to learning and growing. That's why my company name is called See Yourself Grow, because the more that you're learning, the more that you're growing. When you stop learning, that's when you're dying, right? So, and some people are totally happy with, just living, day to day, and happy and content with what they're doing, and that's okay. But I always say, like, if you could turn your hobby into something greater, right? Because we all got to retire one day, right? And so wouldn't you want to retire doing what you love? Right? I'm obsessed with time, Alicia. I'm obsessed with how quickly it comes and it goes, right? And so I just want to ensure that I'm capitalizing on every moment, and living my best life and being here for my children. I think that's the biggest thing.
You mentioned living with regrets.
Mm.
And that is something that has come up in other conversations. But it's such a valuable takeaway. It really is, that I want to highlight it again, because we get so busy living and surviving that we forget we are going to run out of time at some point. And how many people have never even really truly sat down with themselves and thought to themselves, how am I going to feel at the end of my life? when I'm looking back in retrospect. Now, I know for me, when I had that awareness, I was like, I've been playing too small.
Mhm.
I don't want to live with regrets. If I only get one chance to be this version of me, I want to play full out. It doesn't mean that you won't encounter challenges. It doesn't mean that you don't have to do inner work. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be invested in growth. But what it does mean is that you're going to go for it. You're willing to take the tumble, to pick yourself up, to dust yourself off. You're willing to take that risk or what other people perceive as a risk. But I always challenge myself, if I don't do this, how am I going to feel?
Mhm.
That's a risk.
Yeah.
Denying what opportunities could lead you to what your heart desires, that is a huge risk.
Yeah.
So it's all in how you look at it. It's all in the mindset. It's all in how you reframe things. So I'm really hoping that, we've inspired a couple of people who maybe, they're probably doing big things. They're probably doing great, right? But they're looking for that little bit of an edge. And I think the self-assessment piece is a huge takeaway. And just knowing that none of us have it all figured out. We're all figuring it out. We're all
Mhm.
kind of learning and creating as we go. But one thing that can really be kind of like your North Star, your guiding light,
Yeah.
is, what do you want? When you are looking back in retrospect at your life, how do you want to feel about the
Yeah.
life that you lived? And no,
Yeah.
you can't change the past, but you sure as hell can change the future from this moment forward.
Oh, yeah. I always say to people, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing, right? Whatever you are not changing. So if you are making a conscious effort not to make a change, then you are choosing to stay where you are, whether if it's, a weight thing or a relationship or a job, right? And that's your choice, right? But we all have choices. And the same way I tell my kids to try new things every day is I challenge adults to do the same, right? I've had the great pleasure of doing group coaching events on the power of positive thinking, the power of goal setting, and the power of future visioning to over 3,000 adults. And now I'm doing it for the kids here in our school district. And just last week, I did one session, and this little boy, he came up to me and he's like, Miss, he's like, this was so great. He's like, I think negative about everything. And I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 10. I'm like, you know, like, you can't. I'm like, you got to change the way you're thinking, right? You got to see things in a different light, right? You got to see the possibilities. And so that's why I do what I do. And I think this is why we are meant to tap into our natural talents, because we've been given them for a reason, right? So
This has been a great conversation. And I want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners how they can connect with you.
absolutely. Alicia, it has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. So my website is called seeyourselfgrow.com. So feel free to go there, have a look around. If you land on my events page, you'll always see at least 3 to 4 free masterclasses that I have coming up. In November, I'm doing one on ready for a restart. So anybody who wants to turn their vision into a reality, anybody who is ready, to focus on their goals and or their vision for 2022, feel free to join me there. Then I also do how to 21 ways on how to kick your procrastination habits, because we all have procrastination habits. Some of us just know how to deal with them better than others. And then I also do another free masterclass. It's a 90-minute session on how to see your business grow at the speed of light. So I take everything that I've learned over the last 13 years of my coaching journey. And I've pulled it all together on, the top 6 success habits that have helped me achieve my success.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tina,
No
for
problem.
being with us and sharing your wonderful energy.
Thank you.
And I want
Forever
to thank,
grateful. Thank you, Alicia.
and of course, I want to thank all of our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. So many incredible people sharing their wisdom, sharing their energy, sharing their insights. Really, you don't want to miss any of them. So make sure you subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you in the next episode.